Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Unspoken Truth. I'm the founder of Mutual Respect and the host, Daniel. And today's episode is something that near and dear to most men in this country that have faced false allegations, and that is the domestic violence industry. It is an industry, and we'll dive into that a little bit more now. So the domestic violence industry is one that is tearing this country apart. The weaponization of empathy disguised as an epidemic of male domestic and family violence. You see, the domestic violence industry claims to protect the vulnerable. But what if this billion-dollar machine is built on a dangerous distortion? One where all victims are assumed to be women and all perpetrators are assumed to be men. A narrative weaponized by emotion and empathy, legislated into law and funded at the expense of justice itself. Politically driven divisive feminist ideology has masterfully positioned itself as the sole voice for victims. But Australia's own legal system reveals the darker truth. Take Section 9A of the Crimes, Domestic and Personal Violence Act 2007 in New South Wales. It empowers courts to issue apprehended domestic violence orders without a trial or conviction based on reasonable grounds, not hard evidence. These orders destroy lives in a heartbeat and are directly responsible for a large part of the destruction of fathers and families in this country. In 2023 alone, more than 33,000 violence orders were issued in New South Wales, and the vast majority, you guessed it, against men. According to the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research, over 60% of defendants were jailed for DV offences, but they had not been convicted at the time of incarceration. Where is the presumption of innocence in any of that? More than 1 in 7 Australian men will face a false or unproven accusation of abuse in their lifetime. Yet legislation like Section 68R of the Family Law Act 1975 ensures that family violence allegations can override parenting orders without proper evidence. Weaponizing protection laws to sever children from predominantly fathers and become a large portion of the 47 men that are committing suicide every week in this country. How is this not political and legal coercion to ultimately destroy the family unit by destabilising the protector, the father? Meanwhile, reports show that less than 1% of proven false accusers are ever prosecuted for perjury or misleading police, allowing the system to feed itself unchecked at the expense of genuine equality before the law. In 2022, the Albanese government announced $4.7 billion. That's right, $4.7 billion to tackle domestic violence, the lion's share allocated to female-focused NGOs, lobbyists, and so-called lived experience panels. Organisations like Our Watch and ANROS shape government policy under the guise of research, despite openly declaring a gendered lens that excludes male victims and overlooks violent women. That sadly have been far more prominent in recent years due to no or significantly insufficient legal accountability for their violent crimes and never for their false accusations. Even more disturbing, Australia's national DV campaigns omit male survivors entirely, despite 1 in 3 victims being male, according to the ABS Personal Safety Survey in 2016. And what happens when women become violent? What happens? Courts go soft. In DPP v Gerard, in the Victorian Supreme Court appeal in 2016, a mother who stabbed her partner was spared jail due to her emotional distress. In R.V. Stacey, Louise Hall in 2022 in the Queensland Court of Appeal, a mother who violently assaulted her infant received a non-custodial sentence. Are we starting to see the big picture here? There's always an excuse for a violent mother or a violent female. Now you compare that to countless fathers imprisoned without trial under interim protection orders, their names dragged through the mud, their access to children completely revoked, all before a shred of evidence is ever tested. Even Erin Pizzey, the founder of the world's first DV refuge, saw it coming. She warned that feminist radicals have hijacked the cause, pushing a narrative of male evil and female innocence. In her words alone, she said, they weren't interested in helping families, they wanted power, and they got it. And they got it at the expense of our families. In Australia, that power funds initiatives like taxpayer-funded gendered policy training and absurd gender-divisive ad campaigns that are directly targeted to blaming all men for domestic and family violence while implying that all women are vulnerable victims. They've weaponized empathy and they've turned policy into prejudice. Empathy is now an emotional currency, cashed in through lived experience panels, not cross-examination. It silences an entire half of our population. Children are now taught that masculinity is toxic, while mothers who commit violence are framed as victims of circumstance. Some states even exclude boys from government-funded DV education programs in schools. And as journalist Kathy Young wrote, this is a war against men dressed in virtue. The domestic violence industry has turned empathy into a weapon. Real victims, male and female, deserve support, not exploitation for the benefit of the political narrative, and not to prop up manipulated, manifested, false statistics claiming that we're in some form of epidemic. And until we dare to speak out, the injustice will only grow at the very detriment to our future generations. Because as I keep asking Australia, how will your children remember you? Will you stand united and safeguard both our young boys and girls? Or will you bow down and accept the gender divide that is destroying our country and our children? To all the genuine Aussies out there, please think about this episode, because the truth remains unspoken only until we find our balls to speak it. This has been another episode of Unspoken Truth. I'm the host, Daniel, and as I keep asking and I keep begging, find your balls, Australia, especially Australian men. A line needs to be drawn in the sand. If you can't stand up for future generations, then you can't look in the mirror and call yourself a man, in my opinion. You can't defend your country. You can't defend your children's future. You should have chose not to have children in the first place.